Good morning. My name is Tim Groeling, and I'm the chair of UCLA's Department of Communication Studies. I'd like to begin by wishing all the fathers here today an especially happy Father's Day. You're off to a good start. And welcome our families, friends, and particularly the 40th class of seniors to graduate from UCLA with a major in communication studies. It is now my great pleasure to bring in the 2014 graduating class. Thank you. Welcome. Now I'd like to introduce you to some of the distinguished faculty and staff that make up our department. Nushin Arbabzadeh is a lecturer in communication studies. Her research and teaching focus on Middle Eastern media and the relationship with the wider world. Her latest book is Afghan Rumor Bazaar, Secret Subcultures, Hidden Worlds, and the Everyday Life of the Absurd. Dee Bridgewater is a lecturer in speech and the co-director of the Institute in Communication Skills for International Students. A licensed psychologist, Dr. Bridgewater maintains a private clinical practice. Greg Bryant is Associate Professor of Communication Studies. His research and teaching focus on language and speech and the evolution of communication. Travis Dixon returned to his alma mater, a Communication Studies graduate, as an Associate Professor. Dr. Dixon's research and teaching focus on the content and effects of stereotypes in the mass media. Chuck Goodwin is Professor of Communication Studies. Chuck studies human interaction and especially the interrelationship between language and the body. He uses video to investigate cognition, aphasia, gesture, gaze, and how language is built through interaction between speakers and hearers. Chuck has recently been awarded honorary doctorates from universities in Sweden and Denmark. Marty Gregory is a senior lecturer in speech. She coordinates the internship and field studies program, placing students at various media and communication organizations in the Los Angeles area. Carrie Johnson is Associate Professor of Communication Studies. Her research and teaching focus on aspects of nonverbal communication, including communication and perception of identity from visual cues in the face and body motion. Rafi Kasabian is an attorney with Reed Smith, where he practices business and real estate litigation. A UCLA Communication Studies alum and graduate of UCLA School of Law, Rafi's teaching focuses on freedom of speech and advertising. William Kelly is a lecturer in communication studies. His research and teaching focus on dyadic interaction and intercultural theory. Kariel Kaczynski is a lecturer in communication studies. Her research and teaching focuses on rhetoric and persuasion and the ways in which they intersect race, class, and gender. John Cochin is a lecturer in speech and was a faculty advisor to UCLA's advertising and marketing team for many years. Nazo Kalugian is an attorney with Joseph Farzam Law Firm, where he practices labor, employment, and civil litigation. A UCLA Communication Studies alum as well, Nazo's teaching focuses on propaganda and the media. Neil Malamuth is Professor of Communication Studies and Psychology and one of my predecessors as chair of this department. His research and teaching focus on conflict and communication and the mass media aggression towards women. Judy Milestone is a former senior vice president at CNN and is former vice chair of the Smith College Board of Trustees. She is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and the U.S. Advisory Commission on Public Diplomacy for the Arab and Muslim world. We are lucky to have Judy co-teach a class with Barry Sanders on public diplomacy. Tom Miller is a senior lecturer in speech and coaches the UCLA debate team. He teaches courses in public address and argumentation. Steve Peterson is a lecturer in communication studies. His research and teaching focus on multicultural television, social networking, and communication dynamics of film and TV production. Michael Suman is another UCLA alum. He joined our faculty after teaching in Japan, Korea, China, and the Marshall Islands. He is famous for his development of our most popular and required lower division course, Comm 10. Paul Von Bloom is yet another UC grad. He got his JD at Berkeley and a True Bear, stayed on to teach there. Even after migrating south, Paul remained loyal to his Bruin family roots, teaching for both our program and African American Studies at UCLA. Trina Wright Dixon is a lecturer in communication studies, women's studies, Afro-American studies, and the Anderson School. Her research and teaching focus on organizational communication. Sylvia Merschel and Rima Johanna, they're the first people our students meet when they come to inquire about the major. Sylvia is the co-director of the Institute for Communication Skills for International Students. We appreciate all that these wonderful ladies do to help our students, staff, and faculty. Pia Svensson When it comes to counselors, Communication Studies has been unbelievably fortunate to have a super mega star. As a Bruin, Pia's background has made her a special gift for every one of our majors, as she's helped lead them through the puzzling maze of our university's requirement for a BA degree. Alyssa Golay. Alyssa was sitting where you were last year. She actually decided we weren't going to let her go so easily and made her stay. Alyssa was an amazing student who double majored in comm studies and poli-sci and has been doing outstanding work for our department in the past year. Now she's off to Berkeley Law School, where we're sure she'll continue to excel. And if you guys have been seeing a blur of motion in the corner of your eyes, that's Jane Batar, who's up here. I know that many of you have spent countless hours in the welcoming confines of Jane's office. Some of you have been lucky enough to receive food of various kinds while you're there. The very luckiest have received cake, of which she's noticeably famous. All of you, I'm sure, have received at least one email from Jane at some point, maybe more, maybe a few more, during your time here at UCLA. Jane is our department manager. She's in charge of keeping the wheels going on this bus and having them not fall off. And she's also the person who did most of the work to make this fabulous ceremony come off today. Perhaps most importantly, Jane is the mom, the center, the heart of communication studies, and we thank her for it. So that's our faculty and staff. Now let me tell you a little bit about our 2014 graduating class, who are right out here in front of you. I know you already know something about them, or else you probably wouldn't be here today, but collectively, you might not know exactly how much they've accomplished while they've been here at UCLA. They've completed a very challenging curriculum in the major, 7 lower division, 11 upper division courses in the major, which is a liberal art within the Division of Social Sciences. Many have chosen to expand their academic curriculum by meeting additional course requirements in second majors, minors, and specializations. And when it comes to accolades, our 2014 grads are a stellar class. Many of them have earned an array of national and university honors, such as Golden Key, Mortarboard National Honor Societies, Latin and college honors, which are easy for these guys, and Phi Beta Kappa. That explains all the glittering gold that you see blinding you as they walk across the stage later. Comm Studies students also receive a warm welcome from the nation's top graduate schools. Our curriculum's broad theoretical background prepares our students for graduate work in the professions and academic fields of their choices. Our students in communication studies have gone on to study communication studies at the graduate level, other social science disciplines, as well as law, management, medicine, journalism, public policy, and the fine arts. This fall, our students will be entering many of the finest graduate programs in the country, including universities such as Yale, Columbia, Princeton, Harvard, Northwestern, Georgetown, Stanford, Berkeley, and even UCLA. The class of 2014 will take a variety of career paths. Our field studies program, supervised by Marty Gregory, introduces seniors to the professional world of communication. A number of our students graduates have accepted positions in the media and entertainment industries. They'll be working in advertising, business, education, finance, journalism, music, politics, production, and public relations. And speaking of careers of outstanding alumni, I would like to introduce today's guest speaker, Raymond Nasser. Raymond, thank you. Raymond graduated from Comm Studies at UCLA in 1984. He then earned his law degree with honors from Pembroke College, Cambridge in 1986, 2 years later, for those of you doing the math. After receiving his law degree, Raymond worked at public relations and corporate speechwriting at Apple Computer, which some of you might have heard of, Sun Microsystems, director of corporate relations at Novell, where he led the company's corporate and government relation efforts. After that, he served as a director of executive communication at a little company called Google, that you guys might also have heard of, from 2001 to 2005, and was responsible for several aspects of the public communications for the senior management of the company. Since 2004, he has been teaching at the Graduate School of Business at Stanford University and recently has been appointed to their permanent faculty. And he's been a visiting fellow at the Said School of Business at Oxford University. He also maintains a communication consultancy where he has advised a number of startups and venture capital firms, including Pandora Media, Twitter, Snapchat, and Innovation Endeavors. Please help me welcome Raymond Nasser.
Good morning. You guys look great. Just what a sight. Amazing, happy, healthy, recharged. Did you just do finals? You don't look that way. Terrific. Thank you for that very, very generous introduction, Professor Gerling. It's a delight to be here. What a treat. You know, I always feel kind of comfortable when I visit Los Angeles, especially so over the last 2 or 3 years. That's because I've been experiencing what can only be described as a brief brush with Hollywood-style celebrity. Not for anything I've done in my career, but because of what can only be described as a case of mistaken identity. At least once or twice a week, at cocktail parties, in restaurants, or even at the airport, people approach me thinking that I am one of 2 television celebrity stars. These folks are convinced that I'm either Sanford Banish from Sex and the City or Mosey from the TV show White Collar. This is awkward because I've never actually watched either program. Apparently the sidewall haircut, boxy glasses, complexion give way to this situation. But it's kind of fun being a celebrity for a couple minutes a week. I advise you to try it. Truly, truly delighted to be here to help celebrate the 40th anniversary of Communication Studies, and of course, to congratulate all of you. 40 years of Comm Studies is a tribute as much to the original vision of the founders as well as it is of the recognition of the current leadership and the faculty who are doing such an exceptional job to keep the program fresh, to keep it vital, and to keep it consequential. Today, I'd like to share 3 observations about what's changed since my time at UCLA 30 years ago. What's changed in the areas of communications, the job market, and the third topic is what I'm calling the triumph of the humanities. And I'm using humanities as a great big umbrella, which includes many social science disciplines, but particularly communication studies. So what's changed and what's remained the same, as the French would say, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. Taken together, I hope you get a sense that opportunities for communications professionals today are limitless. And if I were in your shoes, which I once was, I'd be brimming with optimism. So, topic 1, what's changed? Well, communications back in 1984, we got most of our news from 3 broadcast networks. CNN didn't exist. We read at least 1 major metropolitan newspaper. To make a phone call, we'd need to coordinate time and location because there were no such things as cell phones. And we had these things on campus called telephone booths. all over the place. They're nowhere to be seen today. Computers were all about punch cards and mainstream and mainframes, and happened usually on South Campus. And although Apple introduced the Mac in January of my senior year, 1984, personal computers were a novelty. But as PCs became more pervasive, and that was about the same time that I started working at Apple. So I started working at Apple after Steve Jobs had left, so it was 1987 or so, and I left Apple in 94 before Jobs returned, so I was at Apple between jobs. But we were all convinced that the personal computing was the center of the computing universe, and the standalone desktop machine was everything. That was until about 1994 and the birth of the World Wide Web, which Mark Andreessen and others helped build at the University of Chicago. Everything changed after Netscape hit the scene. The confluence of personal computing, the internet, the prospect of infinite storage, unlimited bandwidth, streaming media, and something called user-generated content transformed virtually every corner of commerce and culture. It was this gigantic, long kaboom when Netscape Navigator, the first browser, first appeared on the scene. We all began realizing at that point that computers were less about computation and more about communications. And at that point, almost overnight, the currency of a communications degree increased in value, and it's been increasing ever since. What still captivates me about that time period and subsequently, outside of these big shifts, the smaller things, seemingly insignificant, have had a huge and irreversible impact on culture. Think of just the simple computer mouse, how much thought went into that and how important it's been. Think about the introduction of the retweet, incredibly powerful, or the swipe left or the swipe right on a smartphone. To communications professionals, we got to shed light on the little stuff as small indicators of where the future may be going, and then develop a narrative, tell a story about how the world may look when these things take root. That's the challenge for us. Those who studied the wonderful British authors class here at UCLA will remember the poet William Blake, who said, "To see the world in a grain of sand, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand." So, amidst all that change, what's remained the same? Simply put, the history of communication, as you well know, has been about making it easier for two individuals, two institutions, two organizations to talk to each other, to have a conversation. This is what the Pony Express was about. It's what Morse code and the telegraph were about. It's what Twitter's about, Snapchat, Uber. All are about reducing the time and the distance between a sender and a receiver. Remember Comm 10? This stuff's relevant, folks. It's well worth it. So the second area, that's communications. The second area that experienced massive change is the job market. Back in the early 80s, honestly, we thought we'd leave UCLA, maybe go to graduate school, become an expert at something, and then find an employer you'd spend the rest of your life with. It was the cradle-to-grave theory of employment. The truth is, there's no way to be an expert at something that does not yet exist. And if we take a baby step back from 1984 to 1980, when I was a freshman at UCLA, with the exception of the very first job I had before Apple, I worked at public television in San Jose as a production assistant for $7 a day. That was my very first job. With the exception, at $7 a day, that'll barely get you like a double decaf frappuccino. I mean, give me a break, it was nothing. But it was cool work. With the exception of the PBS job, none of the actual jobs I had existed in 1980. And it's just extraordinary because I think there's a big observation to be made about the prospects for you all in the future. And on a more general lifestyle level, I've realized that you don't need to be an expert at something in order to love it, in order to enjoy it. You don't need to know that Mozart wrote 41 symphonies to enjoy his music. Same applies to sports. Same applies to wine. If you like something and you're attracted to it and you're interested in it, go for it. Pour yourself in. Professionally, I didn't need to know when I started helping a fledgling little company of 15 people called Twitter that it would be a service that would revolutionize communications. Truth be told, I didn't really get Twitter when I started helping these guys, but I allowed myself the time to be open to the idea of Twitter, a system where ideas can reach a very large audience very, very quickly. But more importantly, I enjoyed hanging out with the founders. These guys were fun. We became friends, and they taught me the latest lessons, and they sharpened my instincts. With respect to Twitter, I did not say, I can't help Twitter. I don't know a stitch about social media. But you know what? Back in 2007, nobody knew a stitch about social media. We were winging it. Very different communications exercise at Twitter than at Google. Remember, Google, when I started, was one of 12 search engines on the market. It was an established category. The communications exercise was one of finding differentiation within a very crowded field. But we did it, and obviously, proof is in the pudding. On another level, in the 1980s, when I made career decisions, I spent way, way too much time paying attention to the experts when I should have been listening to the inner voice, even if it took time to find that inner voice. One of my favorite Mark Twain comments relates to this. He was once asked what he thought of the music of Wagner. When he was asked what he thought of the music of Wagner, Twain replied, "Well, I'm told that the music of Wagner is a lot better than it sounds." Things can get really preposterous when we pay too much attention to the prose. So what hasn't changed with respect to the job market? While it's likely that many of the jobs you'll have do not yet exist today, the environment you're entering is way more accommodating to liberal arts, humanities, and communication studies graduates than it was when I left. What's changed, though, what hasn't changed, I'm sorry, is it has been that way for a while. My error in judgment was not realizing how valuable a comm studies degree could be. My goodness, you're in a great place, you folks. Well done. So yeah, I don't want to diminish the importance of South Campus subjects like computer science and programming. These are the lifeblood of technology innovation. But my friends up north in Silicon Valley would say to liberal arts grads, before you start your job hunting, think about what you believe the world may need. Maybe start your own company. Best time to start a company is earlier in your career when you don't have a lot. Remember what Bob Dylan said? If you ain't got nothing, you ain't got nothing to lose. That might be good timing right now. That's why it's so thrilling to see programs like Startup UCLA. And woo! It's an incubator for teaching the dynamics of entrepreneurship. Well done. Honestly, though, given what I've seen over the last few years, especially the last 10 years, and the companies I've worked with and the people that are leading them, they're not all graduates from technical programs. They're a lot like you, bright, accomplished, and driven. So get used to the idea. You might be doing these new companies. The third idea relates to this very closely, and it's what I'm calling the triumph of the humanities. So before the tsunami hit that became the internet, I was a one-trick pony. I was a speechwriter at Apple, actually. But the birth of the World Wide Web and the revolution in communications that it unleashed had me digging deep to my early education here at UCLA to find my place within this new world. This might happen when the next tsunami hits. Who knows when or where that will be? But give yourself time. Not too much time, but give yourself time to think about where you have a place. It's like what John Wooden, the great basketball coach, would tell his players. Be quick, but don't hurry. Be quick, but don't hurry. But my interest in exploring other areas of communications had me in a great spot to translate technical concepts to the mainstream. That's why I pursued public relations, investor relations, and ultimately became director of communications. A VC friend of mine up north, his name's Ross Jaffe, he likes to call what I've spent the last 20 years of my career doing in Silicon Valley as sculpting the fog. Sculpting the fog, literally giving shape to these huge amorphous phenomena. And there's a lot of fog up in Silicon Valley, by the way. I think there's fog down here too, but could use some sculpting. Yeah. So what hasn't changed for humanities graduates? As incredible as technology development has been over the last 3 decades, I've witnessed the gradual triumph of humanities' value system relative to technology's value system. I've been a cheerleader, of course, for technology, but the value of technology's innovation is all about price performance, reliability, and scalability. Super important, especially if you're going to build a self-driving car or a thermostat or a satellite. You got to have that stuff. But the value systems for humanities graduates, is in asking questions like, let's make sure the solution is proportional to the problem. Have we designed this thing with the greatest possible care and with good taste? Is this an appropriate use of technology? Bigger questions, and our role is to gently challenge the premise of a given venture before things get viral. But once we're on board, once things are happening, we've got to plunge in with the full force of our convictions and go for it. Humanities values also support the view that there will never be a digital substitute for uniquely human experiences, like enjoying the fragrance of freshly baked baguette on a morning stroll along the Seine, or the magic of a romantic candlelit dinner, or even enjoying a piece of music in a beautiful, majestic setting like Royce Hall. I believe technology is the most successful when it brings us closer to these deeply human, authentic human experiences. Just to be clear, it's not a choice of either the sciences or the humanities. As different as these two worlds are, the magic happens when the two are brought together in perfect harmony. And there's a tangible and symbolic example of what I mean, and it happens to be where we're sitting right now in Royce Hall, and the two magnificent towers under which we are gathered. I bet there are a couple of you who, over the last 4 years, or 5 years? 4, 5, 6? No, 4 years, whatever. I bet there are a few of you who, when walking by Royce Hall every day, thought that these two towers were perfectly identical. But when you leave Royce Hall today with your degree in hand, I want you to walk halfway across the quad to Powell Library and stop. I want you to then turn around and take one last look at these two magnificent towers. What you'll notice is that the two are very different, yet their overall effect is one of balance, one of proportion, and one of purity. Okay, promise me you guys will do that. Halfway across the quad, turn around. And you can even do a selfie if you want. It's your call, but go for it. Graceful nobility when those two very different worlds come together. One final idea that hasn't changed since I graduated. The same bet that the state of California made on me, they've made on you. We're part of a very small percentage of the population who had the privilege to attend and graduate from UCLA, and part of an even smaller population who decided to pursue comm studies. Now is your time to contribute great things to the communications world. As Walt Whitman says in his wonderful poem, this powerful play goes on, and you may contribute a verse. Oh, it's so exciting when you do that. Can't wait to see you do all that. So you may be thinking, right, here's our commencement speaker saying how much everything's changed, and then saying nothing's really changed at all. It's partly true, but the key point is UCLA has provided you with the skills and the good judgment to navigate between all of these things that will inevitably change in the future and all of the things that will remain the same over time. UCLA has successfully prepared you for opportunities that do not yet exist. The great Roman god of messaging and communications is, of course, Mercury, timelessly rendered in so many artistic forms, with hope in his heart and with wings on his heels, swiftly dispatching new ideas and concepts. It's in that same spirit that I look at you today, with hope in your hearts and with wings on your heels. May you soar into realms that do not yet exist, and may you return safely to tell us what you've seen, with hope in your heart and with wings on your heels. I send my heartfelt good wishes to all of you and bid good luck to the UCLA class of 2014. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. I'm not sure you guys need to be encouraged to do more selfies, but I think it's a good idea. Each year, as we bid our seniors goodbye, it is a Comm Studies tradition to select speakers to represent our entire class. The graduation class speaker selection committee is comprised of 3 brave senior volunteers, Kathleen Kalania, Samuel Freeman, and Sasha Delamour. This dedicated team took on the time-consuming and challenging task of listening to a large number of excellent presentations in order to pick just one speaker to represent their fellow 2014 Comm Studies graduating seniors. Now, I would like Marty Gregory to come up and introduce our speaker.
Hi. Today I have the honor and the privilege of introducing the wonderful young man that you chose to represent you today. Kyle Kandikian began here at UCLA in the Model United Nations, where he won the moot court competition. That was the start. Through his time at UCLA, he discovered travel and adventure. He went to Turkey and to other countries and decided that the globe was going to be his. He brought the globe here this year as the chair of our student ad committee, which was charged with planning a campaign for Mary Kay Cosmetics. Not very excited. That's all right. Any of you use Mary Kay Cosmetics? But at any rate, he took on the challenge and put his team together, and together they won the regional championship. It is a wonderful experience, and I would thank Kyle deeply for his role in making that happen. I want to congratulate his mother and his father, and happy Father's Day, Dad. What an exciting time this is for you. And I'm not going to take much longer because his two grandmas are anxiously waiting to hear Kyle speak. So please join me in welcoming to the podium Kyle Kandikian.
Good morning, and welcome to Royce Hall, to the UCLA class of 2014 Department of Communication Studies commencement ceremony. Before I begin, I'd like to wish all the fathers here with us this morning a very happy Father's Day. How about a round of applause for the dads? Dads and moms, thank you for your enduring love and support over the last 4 years. I'm sure you and your wallets are very, very happy that this day has finally arrived. I'd also like to take a quick moment to say something to my grandmother, who is here with us this morning. Abuelita Ana, te quiero mucho. Gracias por tu continuo amor y apoyo para mí, mis primos y nuestra familia. Estoy muy feliz que usted esté aquí ahora. Yo nunca me olvidaré de los días que pasamos juntos durante los días de escuela y en el verano con mi hermano cuando éramos niños. Te quiero mucho. My other grandmother, unfortunately, was unable to attend this morning, but I would still like to say something in her honor. Grandma, ցեզի շատ գսիրեմ ու միշտ շնորհաբար եմ ձեր խնամքին ու քաչալերանքին համար։ Իմ մանկության օրերս ձեր հետ երբեք պիտի չմոռնամ. Neither of my grandmothers speak English, in case you didn't figure that out by now. And lastly, to the number one woman in my life, Mom. You are my rock and my inspiration. Thank you does not even begin to communicate my appreciation and love for you. All right, it's over. 3 summers ago, just before the start of my sophomore year here at UCLA, I eagerly posted a Facebook status, one that I had been waiting all summer to post. It read, "Made it into UCLA Communication Studies, exhale," and status. Everything that I had done academically at UCLA before that moment, I had done with one goal and one goal in mind: get into UCLA's Department of Communication Studies. That's right. My status received 48 likes and 8 comments. Hold your applause. 48 likes and 8 comments. Not very impressive by today's standards, but as I would later learn in Dr. Peterson's social networking class, 48 was far beyond the number of individuals I could physically keep up with. You see, despite advances in communication technology and this great new thing called social media, our actual social circles remain stubbornly small. No matter how many friends we may have online, our real-life friends list is limited by our emotional capital as humans. And that friends list is limited to around 150 meaningful relationships that we can maintain throughout our lives. This number, known as Dunbar's number, got me thinking about that group of 150 people. Who were they? When and where would I meet them? What would bring us together? And more importantly, what would keep us together? I have concluded that many of those relationships were formed here at UCLA, and more specifically in the Department of Communication Studies. But what is communication studies? It is a question we comm majors hear far too often, and truth be told, sometimes struggle to answer ourselves. To quote a handout from Professor Suman's analysis of comm effects class, communication studies is an interdisciplinary social science that borrows heavily from the other social sciences. Sociology, psychology, anthropology, linguistics, political science, economics, and history. We learned in Professor Kelly's communication theory class that communication studies cannot be fit into a neat box simply because it is so many things. It's romanticism, it's culturalism, it's the debate between the developmentalists, the interpretivists, and the critical theorists. The incredible and distinguished faculty of this department have taught us that communication studies is language and rhetoric, it's political economy and the mass media, it's feminism and evolutionary psychology. It's forming those 150 human relationships and understanding the symbols that we share with one another to create meaning. Symbols that speak to our humanity, symbols that bring us together and keep us together. Marty Gregory, one of the department's fabulous instructors, once said that our department here at UCLA was the best communications program in the country. Why? Because our students are the best. I could not agree with her more. Never in my time at UCLA have I met more ambitious, hardworking, and passionate students. This is the type of department where at any given moment, you are in a classroom sitting next to the brightest students on campus. Students who are not only paving the way for academic excellence, but who are setting the pace for life outside of the university. This is a department where balancing classes, research, work, extracurriculars, and internships all at the same time isn't just an option, it is an expectation. And when it comes to internships specifically, we comm majors are intense and take them very, very seriously. You would be hard-pressed to find a group of students out there that is as ready and prepared as this group to not only enter the workforce, but begin climbing the ladder of success in industries as far and varied as media, entertainment, technology, law, business, medicine, and many, many more. I am confident when I say that the students you see before you this morning are the future industry leaders of this country and of the world. So, what have we done to get here today? Let's name a few, shall we? We made it through the dreaded group research project in Comm 150 without completely losing our minds. We did it without completely losing our minds. We memorized everything there was to know about the mass media and intimate relationships to pass Comm 10 with flying colors. We braved South Campus as proud North Campus majors with our heads held high and took Stats 10, probably the hardest class any of us ever took here at UCLA. We took Stats 10 and we barely passed, but we passed nonetheless. And we gave fantastic speeches in Comm 1 and didn't get sick in front of the whole class. Why? Because we are communication studies majors, and that is what we do. We communicate. That was a joke. As I said before, this major is so much more than that. Through it all, we had an incredible community here in the department and across campus. I mean, what would we have done without Jane sending us emails at 1 a.m. and chasing after us in Rolf Hall, yelling, "Habibi, Habibi!" and Pia Svensson's sound advice and warm support. It only now occurs to me at the end of this journey that over the last 4 years, I was engaging in the act of creating those 150 relationships that would last a lifetime. Whether we recognize it or not, we are now a part of a 95-year-old tradition. As Bruins, we carved out spaces and relationships on this campus, spaces and relationships that will always hold meaning as symbols of our youth, what we accomplished here together, and where we are headed into the future. Remember the people sitting around you, the members of the class of 2014, the faculty and staff, the parents, support groups, roommates and friends that made this experience what it was, magical. They are a part of those 150 relationships that you will carry with you in life, outside of this place and into the world. There are big things ahead for the class of 2014, and I cannot wait to see those Facebook statuses about all your accomplishments. And remember the wise words of Dr. Peterson wherever you go. Bring a pencil and your integrity. Thank you very, very much, and it is such an honor to be sitting with every single one of you today. Please enjoy this moment, and congratulations once again.
Thank you, Kyle. As Marty mentioned, Kyle was a member of the Bruin advertising and marketing team. The ad team is a student-run organization and gets no course credit and almost no funding from UCLA. They work very hard every year to create a world-class advertising campaign. This year, the team included 8 Comm Studies students, 3 of whom are here today and graduating with you. I'd like to take a moment to congratulate Kyle and 2 other members, Sasha Delamura and Leaf Eng, for winning their regional competition this year. Let's give them a big hand. Nice to meet you. And on a more somber note, I also wanted to take a moment to honor those who should have been attending graduation ceremonies this year had tragedy not intervened. Many members of our university community have a close connection to our sister institution, UC Santa Barbara, and our hearts go out to all the people affected by the tragic events there. Closer to home, it is with great sorrow that I must note the absence today of one of our own students, Jessica Ann Frederick. Jessica was a dedicated student who never settled for less than her best work. As a freshman, she joined Alpha Theta Chi, a Christian sorority, and then went on to hold multiple executive and leadership positions with that organization. She sang in the university chorus and joined Synthesis Dance Theater, where she performed in multiple showcases, including a performance just last month. Jessica took the skills she learned in her classes beyond campus and applied them in her multiple internships, including serving as a marketing intern for UCLA's athletic department and for a socially responsible fashion company called Della LA. No matter who Jessica was with, she shared a bit of herself, her joy, her smile, and her passion for life. While Jessica lived with cystic fibrosis her entire life, she rarely let her struggle show. Her family, who are joining us here today, believes that her immense faith in God is what helped her through her ordeal, and that faith is also what her family relies on after Jessica's passing. They ask that as you celebrate your time here at UCLA today, you remember to pursue your passions wholeheartedly and never take moments like this for granted. Please join me in welcoming Jessica's family to the stage to accept Jessica's certificate. Finally, before we introduce the other members of our graduating class, we wanted to recognize the special effort of 9 of our seniors who have completed the rigorous curriculum demanded for departmental honors in communication studies. In addition to research, these amazing scholars needed to maintain an average grade of 3.5 in their upper division major work with a GPA of 3.3 overall. 6 students from the group have achieved the outstanding GPA above 3.8 that is required to receive highest departmental honors. Sylvia De Souza, Jean-Wan Moon, Samuel Freeman, Alice Teresio, Samantha Teresio, and Alyssa Wyman. Congratulations to these students. Each of our honors students has had the good fortune to receive individual guidance from a member of our faculty, each of whom will now introduce them and their topics, beginning with Greg Bryant.
Hi. I'm introducing Mallory Nagy, and her project was titled Speech Rate and Laughter Affect Judgments of Spontaneous Verbal Irony.
Hi, I'm Carrie Johnson. Each year I have the privilege of working with about 12 to 15 undergraduate students in my lab, and this year I get to introduce one, Alyssa Wyman, who completed an honors thesis project. The title of her project is Something in the Way She Moves. Perceived attractiveness varies as a function of race identity.
Good morning, I'm Steve Peterson. I was lucky enough to supervise 2 amazing, rigorous, very sophisticated research projects. The first is Emily Chu's, who did a study called The Impact of Personal Pronoun Use on Twitter as a Reflection of Perceived Social Hierarchical Position. And the next one is Sam Freeman, whose study was entitled Athlete Representation in Mainstream Television, News Media, and Their Use of Social Media as Brand Management Strategy, a content analysis.
Good morning. It was my pleasure to work with 2 dedicated, talented students who produced excellent work, the first of whom was Sylvia De Souza, and the title of her research paper was Mass Media Representations of Asian Indians on Fictional Television Shows. And Jean-Wan Moon. The title of her work was Comparison of the Effects of Television on Korean and U.S. Women's Body Perception and Eating Disorders.
Good morning and congratulations. I'm Paul von Blum. For the last 2 years, I've had the extraordinary privilege of working with 2 intellectually gifted sisters, Ali and Samantha. I've had them in 2 classes, and they've both done absolutely superb intellectual work. First is Alison Teresio, coming to terms with coming out, the media's influence, societal pressures to stay in or come out of the closet, and its real-life implications. Second is Samantha, Reforming Enhancing Drugs in Academia, the use of Adderall as a study aid, and that is a very serious problem here at UCLA and throughout the country.
Finally, I wanted to welcome my honors student, Tina Tucker, who resisted my best attempts to persuade her not to do a thesis and did a spectacular job on a thesis titled The People's Choice of News, Bias, Political News, and Public Attitudes in the 1940 Presidential Election.